90 days? That's all that stood between the world's most valuable company and complete erasure from history. Not months, not years, 90 days. In 1997, Apple Computer was hemorrhaging money so fast that its own executives privately admitted they might not survive the summer. The company that once promised to change the world was drowning in debt, bleeding customers, and running out of time. And almost nobody outside those walls knew just how close the edge really was. This is the story of the greatest corporate resurrection in modern history. And it begins not with a triumph, but with a collapse. To understand how Apple almost died, you have to understand what Apple once was. In 1984, the original Macintosh wasn't just a product, it was a revolution. Steve Jobs stood on a stage in a black turtleneck and told the world that one man, one machine, could take on the system and win. The commercial aired once during the Super Bowl. The world never forgot it. Apple wasn't selling computers, it was selling belief. For a brief electric moment, it worked. Apple went public, made millionaires overnight, and became the symbol of everything bold and different in Silicon Valley. Steve Jobs was on the cover of every magazine. He was the future. He was unstoppable. And then he was gone. In 1985, after a bitter internal power struggle, Apple's own board forced Steve Jobs out of the company he built. The man who created Apple was escorted out of his own house. What came next was a slow, painful unraveling that would take over a decade to fully destroy what Jobs had built. The executives who replaced him weren't visionaries. They were managers. Good, cautious corporate managers. Exactly the wrong kind of people to run a company that survived on electricity and imagination. One after another, they made the same mistakes. They licensed the Mac operating system to cheap clone manufacturers, flooding the market and destroying Apple's premium identity. They built too many products, too many variations, too many confusing models with names nobody could remember. Walk into an Apple store in 1996, if you could even find one, and you'd see a graveyard of bad ideas. There was the Performa 5200, the Power Mac 7600, the Macintosh LC 580. Dozens of computers that looked the same, worked differently, and all cost too much for what they delivered. Customers were confused, employees were exhausted, and Microsoft, with Bill Gates quietly smiling in the background, was eating Apple's lunch, its dinner, and its entire future. Windows 95 had just launched with the kind of marketing blitz Apple could only dream about. The Rolling Stones played. Crowds lined up at midnight. Microsoft made computing mainstream, and in doing so, made Apple look like a relic. A museum piece for nostalgic designers who refused to move on. The numbers were devastating. In 1996, Apple lost nearly $1 billion. $1 billion in a single year. The company's market share had collapsed from nearly 20% to somewhere around 4%. 4. Their stock price had fallen so far and so fast that financial analysts stopped pretending recovery was possible. Some openly suggested Apple should shut down and return what little money remained to its shareholders. Then came 1997, and things got worse. By the middle of that year, Apple had somewhere between 90 and 100 days of cash remaining. When the money ran out, and without a dramatic intervention it would run out, there would be no payroll. No suppliers, no product launches, no Apple. Just a footnote in the history of a technology revolution that passed them by. Michael Dell, founder and CEO of the world's largest PC maker, was asked at a public forum what he would do if he ran Apple. He didn't pause. He didn't hesitate. "I'd shut it down," he said, "and give the money back to the shareholders." The audience laughed. Even Apple's enemies had stopped taking them seriously enough to be cruel. Inside Cupertino, the mood was funereal. Engineers who had devoted their careers to the Mac were quietly updating their resumes. The hallways, once buzzing with the kind of obsessive creative energy that built something genuinely new, had gone quiet. People moved with their heads down. Dreams had curdled into survival instinct. Everyone knew, nobody said it out loud. Apple was dying. And then, in the way that the most important moments in history always seem to arrive, everything changed at once. Apple had been trying to acquire a new operating system to replace its aging, crumbling software core. Their own internal attempts had failed spectacularly. So they looked outside. Two candidates emerged. One was a company called B, run by a former Apple executive. The other was Next, a company Steve Jobs had founded after being pushed out of Apple 12 years earlier. The board chose Next. And with it, they brought back the one person in the world who might, just might, be able to save them. Steve Jobs walked back into Apple headquarters in 1997, not as a conquering hero, but as a consultant. The board was careful about that. They didn't give him a title. They didn't roll out a red carpet. There was too much history, too much bitterness. Too many people inside Apple who remembered the chaos of the early years and weren't sure they wanted that particular storm back in their lives. The initial reaction was complicated. Some employees were genuinely thrilled. Jobs had built this place. He understood it in a way no one else could. Others were deeply skeptical. He was older now, but was he wiser or just older? Could the man who had been driven out in disgrace really walk back in and fix what a decade of mediocrity had broken? Jobs didn't wait for them to decide. He started working immediately. And within weeks, anyone paying attention understood that something had fundamentally shifted. The first thing he did wasn't launch a product. It wasn't give an inspirational speech. The first thing Steve Jobs did was walk into meeting after meeting, look at Apple's product line, all the dozens of confusing, overlapping, expensive, unremarkable machines, and start saying no, over and over again, with a cold, almost surgical precision that terrified people who had spent years building those products. He gathered the team. He drew a simple cross on a whiteboard. 4 boxes. Consumer and professional on one axis, desktop and portable on the other. 4 products. That's all Apple needed. 4 great products instead of 40 mediocre ones. Everything else he canceled. Immediately, without sentiment, without hesitation, the room went silent. People had given years to the products being erased with a single line through a whiteboard. Jobs didn't apologize for it. He explained something that sounds almost too simple to be profound, that deciding what not to do is just as important as deciding what to do. Focus isn't about doing more. Focus is about having the courage to eliminate everything that isn't essential. But canceling products wasn't enough to stop the bleeding. Apple needed cash immediately, and Jobs made a move that, to this day, remains one of the most audacious and counterintuitive decisions in business history. He called Bill Gates. In August of 1997, at the Macworld Expo in Boston, Steve Jobs announced a partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft would invest $150 million in Apple. They would commit to developing Microsoft Office for Mac for the next 5 years. And in return, Apple would drop a long-running patent lawsuit and make Internet Explorer the default browser on Macs. The audience booed, literally booed. A giant image of Bill Gates appeared on screen via satellite, smiling, offering congratulations. And the crowd, Apple's own most loyal supporters, received it like a funeral announcement. For many of them, Microsoft wasn't just a competitor. It was the enemy, the empire, the thing Apple was supposed to be fighting against. And here was Steve Jobs, shaking hands with the emperor. Jobs stood at the microphone and said something the room didn't want to hear. He said that Apple needed to let go of the idea that for Apple to win, Microsoft had to lose. He said that was old thinking, poisonous thinking. Apple wasn't going to survive on spite. It was going to survive on making insanely great products. And to do that, it needed to still be alive. The $150 million bought Apple something more valuable than cash. It bought time. And with time, Jobs and his team built something that would change everything. In August of 1998, Apple introduced the iMac. It was a computer unlike anything the industry had ever seen. It came in translucent Bondi blue. It had a handle on the top. It looked like something from a science fiction film that happened to be beautiful. It didn't have a floppy drive, a decision that made industry analysts roll their eyes and declare Jobs out of touch with reality. It cost $1,299, and it sold 278,000 units in the first 6 weeks. By the end of 1998, Apple was profitable again. Not just surviving, actually genuinely profitable. The turnaround wasn't complete, it wasn't permanent yet. But the bleeding had stopped. The patient was breathing. The impossible had happened. The years that followed built on that foundation with a relentlessness that felt almost personal. The iPod in 2001 to iTunes. The iPhone in 2007. Perhaps the single greatest product launch in consumer technology history. The App Store, the iPad. Every one of these products traced a direct line back to that moment in 1997, when a company with 90 days of cash left decided to stop playing defense and start imagining the future. In August of 2018, Apple became the first American company to reach a $1 trillion market capitalization. By 2022, that number had doubled. Today, Apple is the most valuable company in the world. Its brand is recognized on every continent. Its products are carried in the pockets of billions of people. And at the center of all of it is a decision made in a dark moment by a man who refused to accept that the story was already over. Michael Dell, the man who said Apple should shut down and return money to shareholders, was once asked about that comment in later years. He said he wished he could take it back. Apple's market cap eventually exceeded Dell's by a factor that made the comparison almost absurd. Here is what Apple's near-death teaches us, if we're willing to really hear it. Survival is not the same as revival. You can keep a company, or a dream, or a career, technically breathing for years without it ever truly being alive again. What Jobs understood, and what the managers who came before him never grasped, is that the only way out of collapse is through clarity, through ruthless honesty about what you are and what you are not, through the courage to say no to 100 good ideas in service of one great one. There will always be people in the room who tell you the moment has passed, that the window is closed, that the competition is too far ahead and the money is too far gone. There will always be someone ready to hand you a whiteboard and suggest you start drawing the exit strategy. What Steve Jobs proved in 1997 is that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room isn't failure. It's the belief that failure is permanent. 90 days. That's how close we came to a world without the iPhone, without the App Store, without the device you might be watching this on right now. 90 days, and someone decided it wasn't over yet.